Hey, what's happening, guys? Welcome to a wonderful, awesome episode of The Strange Road coming your way. I'm your host, the Brolo Solo, Mikey. But we have a fantastic episode. You guys know where to follow us at The Strange Road on all of those social media platforms. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It really, really does help us. You guys have been awesome sharing all the shorts and reels and everything we've been doing. We see your response, so keep it up, keep sharing. We appreciate you guys so much, but we're going to hop right into it. Help me welcome our next guest, author, researcher, and filmmaker, Mike Ricksecker, everybody. Mike, how the heck are you, man?
Hey, Mikey, great to see you. Why are we at the Lord of the Rings candlelight dinner? Whatever the heck's going on there? That sounds fantastic.
The funny thing is we went in deep on Lord of the Rings towards the end of the episode when you came on the last time. So how fitting is that?
It really is. It really, just listen to the episodes back to back. It'll just be seamless. Absolutely.
Yep. And we are with Bub and Spirit tonight, but we have so much to catch up on, Mike. You got a new book out, which I think ties into so much of the things that we're going to hop into tonight and what everybody's been talking about online. But tell us a little bit about what you've been up to. Talk to us about the YouTube channel. If you guys... Mike's been on Ancient Aliens. He's been on the travel channels, Alaska Bigfoot. The Alaska Triangle, and the Unexplained. History Channel's The Unexplained. So if he looks familiar and you haven't caught our episode with Mike from, I think it was episode 52. But Mike, you're doing a lot. You're crushing it. I'd love to hop into your new book and see how a lot of these things can kind of can tie together. But just tell us what you've been up to here lately.
Absolutely. Well, and the latest one is The Unbelievable with Dan Aykroyd. So been on a few episodes of that already. More coming up here down the road because they're in a new season now, season 2, and they've scheduled something like 40 episodes for the season, which you don't really see in television anymore. But yeah, it's pretty wild. But yeah, latest book, Portals to the Stars. So this is a follow-up from my last one when I was on here before, Travels Through Time. This is part of the Connecting the Universe series. So this is Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. So get into the the concepts and ideas of what's a portal, what's a Stargate, how this ties into a lot of our ancient cultures, where we see that, yes, in ancient Egypt, where we see that in the American Southwest, where we see that in other parts of the world. And, did they have this sort of technology back during that lost ancient civilization that we call Atlantis?
Yeah.
And of course, to get into how that ties into the ancient Egyptian history and all that as well. So, it was an absolute passion project. And it really wasn't supposed to be my second book in the Connecting the Universe series. I was going to do one on Earth energy, and I do get into Earth energy in this book. And when we start talking like stone circles and things like this, in the Energized Earth chapter, which was going to be the name of that book. And when I was out in Egypt, because I run an annual tour, Stargates of Ancient Egypt, and when I was out there this past year, it was such a magical experience. We had a really, really amazing group, and we just, really connected on so many levels. And it just became, I have to do the Stargates book now. It has to come out now. And actually, like we were talking about a little bit here before the show, it really has tied into everything that's going on right now with, these things that we're calling drones, with the big balls of light and orbs that we're seeing in the sky and all of this. So it was really perfect timing for it all.
Oh, absolutely. And it does tie together. And some of the stuff you've been doing, and we can I definitely want to hear about your book, but it's how some of your work in tracking this UAP drone story. And we've been, we've done a few episodes and had some guests that could help hopefully shed some light on it. And it seems like the mainstream media and the general public has kind of moved away, but it's still going on, Mike, and it's global.
It's still going on. Yeah, it's still going on. It's global. I've had connections with a lot of people in Scotland with all of this. But this started all back in, about the middle of November, just before Thanksgiving, and made some minor headlines back then. But I think the fact that it kept perpetuating. Yeah, one of the guys that I've been working with, Scott Davis, he's known as Scotty the Medium on like TikTok and other platforms. He's right there in New Jersey, and he's out in his backyard and he's capturing these things. So yeah, I had him on my show along with Ronnie LeBlanc, who a lot of people know him from Expedition Bigfoot. He does a lot there in the Monsterland area of
Love Ronnie. He's my
Massachusetts.
favorite
Yeah,
guy on that show. He's
yeah,
great.
Ronnie's
I love
that's
him. The way he looks
yeah.
and views the Bigfoot phenomenon with such an open mind and open heart
Mhm.
is really kind of a spiritual aspect of, you can get into the hard-nosed science and the physical being that is Bigfoot and the kind of the hair and the data and Ronnie really goes from his gut, which some folks like that are real hardcore Bigfooters, but that's why I love Ronnie. And on that show, he's so great.
He really is, and just knowing him because I've watched some of the episodes. There's so many shows out there and all that. It's
Yeah,
hard to keep up with everything. And yeah, I loved writing the show, but I know him more from a personal level where we've done a lot of events and things like that together. We've hung out, had some beers, that sort of
cool.
thing. And yeah, so now working with him on some kind of behind the scenes projects and things like that. Yeah, it's just he's just a really cool, down to earth guy, and so yeah, the three of us, Ronnie, Scott, and I have been looking at a lot of this, and so we had a show on my Connecting the Universe podcast where we kind of broke down a lot of different things here. And yeah, you look at Scott's footage, from his backyard, and this thing's going across. It's really low in the sky, sounds like a plane, does not look like a plane, and you're like, what in the world is going on here? And then we have these balls of lights that have been seen along with these things. And Ronnie makes a great point of we started looking up in the skies at what we've been calling drones, and we're
Yeah.
finding these big massive balls of light
Mm-hmm.
along with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I was on Ronnie's Instagram. His coverage was great during all that. And then I saw that you
Oh, he
guys
was
had.
like 20 times a day he was
Oh my
posting
God,
something.
he
Yeah.
was on it. He was on it,
It was.
and you had him on, and he really did a good job. You guys together did a good job of breaking that down. If anybody wants to check that out, all of Mike's stuff is going to be linked in the description. But yeah, I think you guys did a really good job of breaking that down. And there were like layers to those crafts. The big SUV sized drones was one thing. These big plasma orbs that people were filming that were to me as a video person, a lot of those were kind of AI garbage and fake, but there was a few where you could see this wheel inside of a wheel, almost like Ezekiel's wheel. These. So what the heck's that? What's going on there?
Yeah,
Much more
absolutely.
advanced technology.
Yeah, you're having professional photographers post these things. ABC News, they're just out there. They got their camera guy and everything, and there's a drone up there, and they got the camera pointed up there, and it's a ball of light, and you're like, wow. And this is ABC News,
Right.
and so and then I had people from Scotland that were reaching out to me. One of the women that came along on the Egypt tour with me, I'm posting all the stuff about what's going on with the drones and the balls of light and all that stuff. She's like, I'm seeing this outside my window,
Mm.
and this is it was around December 20th, and it's this great brilliant ball of light in the sky. I'm like, is that some sort of star? She's like, no, it's not a star. It's in the atmosphere here. It's not a craft of any sort. It's blinking, it's pulsating, all this sort of stuff. But then there are other people that reached out to me, from that same night, showing me, hey, this is footage that I picked up. They're all looking at the same thing. And as I posted that, I had other people from Scotland that were reaching out to me
Wow.
that were saying, yeah, we saw it on, let's see, December 26th, or, a lot of things in the Fife area. And then Kate reached out to me again with another piece of footage that she had captured. And it's just, yeah, they are having a lot going on. I mean, yeah, they're in Scotland. Yes, they're in New Jersey, but it's really happening all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You take a look at the 1950s. And we had the big UFO flaps, and you had something strange in the skies. Boom, the jets were off, and
Mm-hmm.
taking a look at what was going on up there. And we're not doing that. So, to me, that leads a lot of credence to the idea that there is something the government knows. There's something, the government's behind some aspect of this, and they just don't want to talk about it. And I believe if they had just simply said, "Yeah, we're testing something," and just left it at that, we would have been like, "Oh, okay," and we probably would have just left it alone. And I guess their take on it this time around was, we'll just deny everything, deny everything, deny everything.
When you look at how these things are kind of coming out of, they're just there, which ties into your book. We here at this show, we've been obsessed with portals. One of the things that we love to ask, and maybe we already asked you the last time, is if you had a choice, Mike, to jump into a portal or hop on a UFO for a ride, which one would you choose?
And it's a good question too, because I think a lot of times the UFOs are using the portals to move back and forth. So
Yep.
one is almost the same as the other
Sure.
in some aspects. In either case, I'd probably jump into the portal. Yeah, or I don't know if the UFO is saying, yeah, we're going out into deep space, I might jump in the UFO. In either case, I would leave a note at least, say, this is what I'm doing, because so many people do just go missing, and
Yeah.
you have no idea whatever happened to them. Maybe it was that they're like, oh yeah, I'm getting invited onto the craft with the extraterrestrials, and they're never returned, or they jump into the port. Oh, that looks cool. Let me see what's that about, and
Yeah.
and we never hear from them again. So I would leave a note first. I'm jumping into this.
Yeah.
So if you don't hear from me, that's why. Yeah.
I've always been really passionate about the technology of ancient civilizations and structures and temple complex structures and what's the real purpose. Are some of these places like Chaco Canyon, New Mexico?
Mhm.
Is that Pueblo Bonito with the kivas and the circular
Oh, yeah.
structures and the whole geometry of that place just screams portal, screams,
Oh,
so
absolutely.
how do these stargates and the old theory of Bush and the Iraq war in 2003, one of the main reasons we went there is because they had tablets about stargates, and that's why we went into the museums, because we wanted
Yeah.
to find out where the stargates were in Iraq. Boy, that's a fun theory. Maybe it
It
wasn't just
is,
about
yeah.
oil. What is it?
Yeah. Oh, well, we knew for a fact that yeah, there were items that were targeted out of the museums. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an absolute fact. And there were because these were things that were not on display that were taken. So they were in the back room, and people knew
Mm-hmm.
to go there and get those specific items, and all of that. So yeah, and that's a real shame. And I've seen that sort of thing in Egypt, not necessarily stolen, but and there are Stargates in Egypt. They're right in plain sight. They're actually labeled Stargate, which I cover a lot of that in the book. But like the one of the crypts at Dendera. Now, we're not talking a place where people were buried. It's just basically an underground, subterranean chamber under the temple, and there are several of these under the temple of Dendera. The most famous one is the one that has what we call the light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually three light bulbs in there, but they're not really light bulbs. But the first year that I was there, the first time I visited Egypt, one of the other crypts had just been reopened after like 20 years. They decided to reopen it. We were told we were the first public group allowed down in there. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they told us in any case. Um, and as you're walking through, looking to see, is there another light bulb, that sort of thing down? And there wasn't. In fact, the thing that was really bizarre was that there were so many large blocks that had been removed. And you're thinking, well, okay, it's thousands of years old, things could have crumbled away and that sort of thing. But then when you look, you could see, these, really definitive white marks. I mean, basically they're chisel marks. And because of how white they are, no time for patina to build up or anything like that. So it's like, these are pretty fresh. So people
Yeah.
had taken the blocks. So, when I got back up, I was remarking about this, and one of the guys there, pulled me off to the side. He's like, "Shh, don't
Mm.
stop saying something about it." I'm like, "Why?" It's like, these were, you know, basically designated by private collectors that they wanted these, and there was like a bidding war. over. So this is kind of like what was going on over the previous 20 years. Is there were
Yeah.
specific, like, quote unquote power pieces
Yeah.
that were designated down there, and you had these private collectors that were bidding on them and took those blocks away, and then, okay, we'll open it back up to the public because we got what we wanted out of it. So it's sad, but that happens.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, even the guy from Hobby Lobby, he had to return the CEO or the guy that invented the Hobby Lobby stores. He had a ton of ancient artifacts and got caught with them. He probably bought them from the black market, and
Yeah.
it happens all the time. I mean, think about even in the United States, you hear about these hidden chambers that people find all these artifacts in, and the stories of the lost chamber in the Grand Canyon, where there are these Egyptian style uh, tons of artifacts. People walk out of there with those things. You get hit up by some guy
Oh,
on the
yeah.
way there, that some rich dude, hey, let me buy that off you. How many artifacts and missing pieces of the puzzle are just locked away in some dude's private collection?
Yeah, I mean, a ton, really. And I have friends that are archaeologists that have talked about, being on Zoom calls with people, and they want to know more information about a particular piece, and she's looking right behind it. The piece is there. Is a piece that's supposed to be missing. He wants more information about it, just because out of curiosity, it's like the piece is right behind you on the Zoom call, like crazy stuff like that. But
Wow.
there's a fine line. There's a real gray area here because we talk about okay, the thievery that's gone on over the years. Yes, there's a black market, all that sort of thing, and private collectors have all this stuff in their collections, but yet when it's I don't know, a government agency. I mean, I was just at the, museum here in Cleveland the other day. They have a nice little Egyptian collection, but that's like quote unquote authorized somehow.
Mm-hmm.
The Smithsonian has a bunch of stuff. British Museum is loaded with, all kinds of stuff that they made off with from Egypt, 150 years ago or whatever. But that was okay. And we know that there's like tons and tons and tons of that material that's sitting in a warehouse nobody's looking at right now. They'll pull out, oh, we're going to make a little special collection. We're unveiling this for like the first time in 10 years or whatever. But it's otherwise sitting in a warehouse somewhere. That's okay.
Yeah.
So there's some gray area there.
Yeah, and it's how do you find the real information about portals and stargates if
Mhm.
there's all these things missing, like these stones that I'm interested in,
Yeah.
and these power stones, and they're missing. Like, how do you ever re
It's a challenge. Yeah,
yeah, how do
because
you find that refind that technology, and can
right.
you turn these things back on, Mike?
Well, that's kind of the big question. Can we turn them back on? As far as getting all the information, I mean, that's a challenge because yeah, there's so many pieces of it missing. So, we're left to deal with what we can see, what we can find, what might be released as information. You're kind of, trying to look between the lines as, okay, what did they perhaps miss that I can get another piece of information here? Yeah, because the Stargate rooms and temples and all of that in ancient Egypt. They're right in plain sight because they're actually labeled as Stargate. But there's a lot of controversy as to what they were actually used for. Did they actually transport people to other places in the cosmos, other places on Earth, maybe another dimension, another point in time? Was it just an ultra state of consciousness? Because they talk about ingesting these white cakes that had monatomic white gold in them. Then they would go into the Stargate chambers. So it almost kind of like smacks of something like ayahuasca or that sort of thing. But
Right.
then when you look into the properties of monatomic white gold, if they're ingesting it, well, a lot of the stories of just the stuff in the dish, you heat it up to a certain temperature, it disappears and seemingly goes into another dimension
Mm.
of some sort. So it's like, okay, does that do that to the body? Do you end up going into another dimension with this thing inside the Stargate chambers? But
Wow.
we don't know for sure. So we're kind of left to speculate on that and hoping we come across other bits and pieces of information to help, fill in the gaps of the puzzle.
Right. What it is if you can help explain what monatomic white gold is, because this is something I've heard about
Yeah.
for years and never could really wrap my head
Yeah,
around.
yeah, I know
You know,
it's a
as someone that's is maybe a chemist or an alchemist, it just seems really fantastic, or just some kind of technology maybe that we
Mhm.
don't understand, like how to create it, or what was it used for?
Right, and I mean, so, yeah, I mean, I'm not a chemist, right?
Yeah.
So it's, the information that I've been able to put together. But David Hudson back in the 1980s did a lot of research on this. So yeah, you can find people selling monatomic white gold, ORMS, that sort of thing. ORME is there's two different kinds. ORME and then whatever the other one is. In any case, and people are selling it online, but we don't really know what David Hudson's original process was. So people are kind of coming up with their own methods based on. So in the 1980s, he was basically a farmer turned miner turned alchemist. He had a farm out there in the Phoenix, Arizona area. It, he was struggling with it, so he decided to mine the area for gold, which there has been a lot of gold mining out there over the
Mm-hmm.
years. And so as he was going through this chemical process of mining the gold, basically he was left with this additional substance and he was trying to figure out exactly what it was. And so this is where he like brought in chemists and um, University of Iowa and all these others got involved. And so yeah, monatomic white gold just basically means single molecule gold. It um, is produced in like this fine powder,
Mm.
but it has these really, really unusual properties. Like when you put this, pile of this dust, this gold dust in the pan to weigh it. Well, let's say your pan is, I don't know, 5 grams. You put this dust in the pan, all of a sudden you would expect it to weigh more, right?
Yeah.
No, all of a sudden it weighs less. Like, I'll just throw an arbitrary number out there. All of a sudden it's like 3 grams. And you're kind of scratching your head. Why does this weigh less? It should be more, right? You usually do simple math. Well, you the whole thing is should be like 10 grams or whatever. You subtract a 5 for the pan, so our thing ends up as 5 grams. Well, that was not what was happening. The pan was weighing less with the stuff in it, and then they would heat it up to a certain temperature, and it would disappear. Now, that in itself is
Wow.
interesting, but we have other things that we heat it up to certain levels, and it'll just turn not really invisible, but just
To gas.
well, not even really a gas. I mean, it'll be like in a liquid state, but see through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, you can even like water, for instance, if it's frozen, right? It's white,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much, but then you melt it down, it turns clear.
Right.
So that sort of thing would happen with this, or uh, strike that, reverse it. This sort of thing would not happen with this. It would just completely disappear. Like you couldn't even see that there was any sort of substance in the pan at all.
Wow.
And so then they would take like a little spatula and kind of stir it around because if the material's still in there, you should be able to manipulate it. Like you could stir water around or whatever. Um, and then they would cool it back down and there would be like no manipulation done to it whatsoever. It'd still be in the little pile that it was left in before it was heated up. So this is where some of these researchers and scientists working on this start speculating: is this actually, is this is like defying, space time? Is this like going into another dimension,
Yeah.
sort of thing? So yeah, it's a really, really interesting substance, and with the and it's not out of the realm of possibility that the ancient Egyptians truly had this, because in the Sinai area, um, we find there are thousands of mines over the years. They were mining, gold, turquoise, copper, all these different things, and you know this would have been a byproduct of that. You would find this in these different mines. And when you look on the walls, like at the Temple of Abydos, and they're talking about these white cakes. So the term that was used for this monatomic white gold in ancient Egypt for many, many years was mufkuts. And our guide for our Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, Mohammed, for years he was like, I don't understand why you're calling this stuff mufkuts. Mufkuts means turquoise. And so he did a lot of research into this area because this was something that was bothering him for a long time. He finally figured it out, is that the material is actually called heb shait, which means white cake, but it came from Mufkut's land. He actually found this in the walls there at Abydos. It actually came from quote unquote turquoise land, which is basically the mines in the Sinai area. So it's like, okay, so this is starting to make a lot more sense. So yeah, this was something that they ingested before going into these Stargate chambers.
Wow. So it's kind of maybe helping your body resonate in some way, like ingesting this.
Yeah.
It's somehow affecting your cells or your this third dimensional material reality in some way when you bring it in. And these chambers, maybe they resonate with a certain frequency. Can you get into any of that? Because I really do
Yeah.
feel like there's something with portals and sound and frequencies and cymatics where maybe that's a missing part of all this technology is just like resonating one of these things and just seeing what happens. There's some archaeoacoustic
Right.
guys from Europe that we were lucky enough to have on, Phil and Ricardo, and they have gone into these hypogeums and in Malta and are studying these frequencies and sound in these ancient places. And you know is that what activates these portals? Is that anything that you've looked into or come across that maybe points in that direction?
Yeah, there's definitely, you look at a lot of these different locations, and there's definitely a sound component to it. For one, when you're talking about, you kind of hit on a lot of different things here. When we talk about, frequency, resonance, energy, vibration. So when you walk into these different temples throughout Egypt, um, yeah, as you're entering the complex, it might be the gateway into the whole temple area, like as you're headed into the courtyard, could be the doorway as you're headed into the main temple complex. There's always a gateway that you have to walk through that is made of granite, of Aswan rose granite, which is anywhere from like 55 to 60% quartz. And that's significant. I mean, the whole temple could be sandstone or something, or limestone, and limestone would be even better. But it could be a completely different material. But yet there's this granite gateway or a granite threshold at the bottom of the gateway. And this is important because it basically clears your energy as you're going into the temple.
Mm.
So, whatever, negative energies that you had coming from, the outside would be cleared as you walked through that. So you would enter into the temple with pure energy. And of course, that was very important. So, using something like the monatomic white gold cakes or other materials would, you know, be an enhancement to you're pure, but in order to use this device or whatever it is that you're doing, this is going to be an additional enhancement to fine tune your frequency here. And I've always believed, like when we talk to travels through time, that entering into another point in time, actual real time travel had more to do with consciousness, meditation, frequency, that sort of thing. Trying to resonate with another point in time would be basically syncing yourself up to the frequency of that other moment. So it's kind of the same concept, but and that could have been what was going on here. They could have actually been going to another point in time, but I think also other places in the cosmos or other dimensions and these sorts of things that they were actually interacting with. Now, as far as like sound technology, yeah, we see. So the Temple of Dendara is another one that has the Stargates there. But that temple is also a temple of Hathor. Now, she was a goddess of healing, goddess of fertility. She was also a goddess of music. We find her
Mm.
depiction with music a lot, and at that temple we see as you're going up the stairs depictions of processions, great big huge processions. They're carrying all kinds of different things up the stairs to where that Stargate area was, and that's also when the Dendera zodiac was it was at, which is also more than just a zodiac; it's a star chart. Um, and of course, some of the things that they have are instruments. So yes, you could very well be using sound technology to to open up these portals. But even we've been talking a lot about Egypt, but you find this outside of Egypt as well. So like stone circles and things like this. And one of my favorites was John Begg Stone Circle in Ireland, and it's a smaller stone circle, and you stand right in the middle of that thing, and you just talk, and it's like you have this feeling that you're encapsulated inside this bubble. It's almost like being it's like a fishbowl type of effect. And of course, it has to do with the resonance off of the stones that are surrounding you. Well, these are thousands of years old, and some of the stones are missing. So you think of this thing back in its heyday when you had all the stones that were there, and they're not weathered down. They're huge. They're in their big full glory. The type of resonance that would just reverberate back at you. It's like, I'm just standing there talking. These guys would be like chanting and going through their full
Mm-hmm.
ritual of whatever it is that they're doing, because we don't truly know.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have an idea that this was used for healing and some sort of rituals. There's a lot of ideas that the stone circles were also used to open portals and stargates and things like this. So yeah, absolutely, sound is a part of it.
Oh, I totally believe that. We went to Stonehenge in 2018. We worked in Switzerland, and then we had a few days where we took a train from Switzerland up into through Germany and got to go to Amsterdam. But we ended up going to Stonehenge and then flying out of London. And boy, it was at a certain point you crossed into a threshold,
Mhm.
and you felt like you were pushed. It felt like I pushed through a bubble, like you just said.
Yeah.
There was this wall of energy, and you were normal, and then you crossed through a threshold, and it was like being in one world to the next. You were in this bubble of energy, and
Yep.
it really freaked me out because I'd never felt anything like that before. And how we have henges here in Ohio. We have
Yeah.
the Great Circle, and
This is the Great Circle Earthworks. Yep.
and it really reminds me of like LaGrange, and Stonehenge has an earthwork or a ditch, basically a circular structure built around it, and how similar in some ways, where they had megalithic structures. We didn't necessarily have them. Now there's rumors of megalithic structures in some of these mounds in Indiana and things like that kind of got completely torn apart, and we'll never know, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
Well, there's a connection there, Mikey.
yeah,
So one of the other stone circles that I was at there in Ireland, Grange Stone Circle, and it's the biggest one in Ireland. But as I stood there looking at it, it's like it's smaller than Great Circle Earthworks, but it's like this is built the same.
yeah.
The only thing that was different was they added stones to it, but it was essentially built the same as Great Circle Earthworks that we have here in Ohio. And it's like, there is an absolute connection here between these two cultures. They were not supposed to have had a connection,
Right.
but there absolutely is. And yeah, it's a shame here in the United States. They estimate that up to 80% of our ancient structures like that were plowed under for farmland.
Oh, it's so sad. And some of them are partially like Sipe Earthworks, Fort Ancient.
Yeah.
They're so overgrown with trees and brush, and, the corporation that runs all of those sites are just, they're doing a terrible job of stewarding these places. And I can only speak for what we have here in Ohio, but it's shameful. I mean, you go to Fort Hill, there's a museum there. There's nobody there at the desk. There's nobody there to welcome you. The museum's never open. You go up there and you have on top of the earthwork structures, huge trees that have been tipped over. I mean, there's probably 25, 30 of these trees. And underneath the root system, when they come over, is all these laid stones that are stuck to the bottom of the roots. And right there, you don't even have to do an archaeological dig. The
It's right
whole
there, plain sight, yeah.
road is right, and you got 25 open holes. And I just hopped down there with our buddy Ryan Singer, me and Paranormal U, Ryan, and we, did a hike with it. His friend came with, and we went with Jeffrey Wilson, and I'm just shocked that nobody has done research. I mean, right here is the material underneath the earthwork, perfectly laid stones.
Mhm.
And it's just an absolute shame. But then you go to LaGrange, you go to Stonehenge, you go to these places. It's like they're so revered, and people
Right.
have been stewarding those places for thousands of years, probably since Roman times. Somebody had been taking care of those places. And again, you can still see the earthworks. It's not like they were completely run over. Yeah, the stones are there, but you can still see the carved ditch at
Sure.
Stonehenge, or the place that you were talking about. You can barely
Yeah, you
see
can absolutely see,
anything.
and it's a shame how, I mean, a lot of these sites are underfunded. There's a handful, like Stonehenge, and if you, here in the United States, like Cahokia,
Yeah.
that there's been a focus on those.
Yeah.
This is, we're gonna, whatever happened back in the day, this is our important site. This is the one that we are going to really, really focus on,
Yep.
and that's the one that attracts everybody. But yeah, there are others that are just, they're not really well kept up, but they have an absolute energy to them. So like
Mm-hmm.
Great Circle Earthworks, I was there on I just wanted to get some drone footage.
Yep.
So I had my drone all charged up, talking about drones. And I went out there onto Eagle Mound
Yeah.
and, launched the thing up in the air. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get some great footage. And it wasn't up there but 2 minutes. And all of a sudden, doo, 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 low battery. I'm like, what in the world? This thing
Right.
was completely charged up, So yeah, there was obviously, the energy there drained the battery out of the thing. Spiral mounds in Oklahoma, and there's they call it Brown Mound. Basically, it was a mound that a temple had been on.
Mm.
So you're able to walk to the top of this. And I had been doing a live broadcast, and you know, outside of Brown Mound, I was totally fine. Got up to the top of Brown Mound. Now you're thinking I would have a clearer signal on the
Mm-hmm.
top of this mound. Nope. The signal kept cutting out, cutting out, cutting out. Got back down off the mound, perfectly fine. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
the ancients knew to build their temple there.
You're going up
Yeah,
in elevation. Once you get up to the top, you're gonna have a nice clear signal. But you had a
exactly.
worse signal because
At a
there's
worse signal.
some kind of vortex spot or something that you were in.
Yeah,
Um,
either something that they had built, or they built there. Most likely, they built there because they knew the energy was there, and so
Bingo.
so obviously, harness the energy there for our temple. Yeah.
Right. And one place that we share a connection with is the Verde Valley, and
Yes.
in the Sedona, Arizona region. But the larger region around that's called the Verde Valley. If anybody's ever, if you go to Sedona,
Definitely
that's
got it.
great. But boy, the whole Verde Valley, that whole region is such a trippy, unbelievable place. But there you see the petroglyphs of the hands all over the place, starting in Albuquerque and all the way down through Sedona, the Grand Canyon. If you ever hike around in those areas, yeah, you can see like the weird alien petroglyphs and stuff like that. But you'll see the
Yeah.
spirals and you'll see the hands. And our guide told us that the hands were their way of saying, this is where the energy is. They're
Mhm.
going around feeling the rocks, putting their hand on these spots, saying, hey, the ley lines are crossing right here. And in Sedona and those regions,
Mhm.
you see the handprints because that's where the vortex spot is. And that's where the
Yeah.
spiral petroglyphs are.
Well, yeah, and the spirals, yeah, I see those all over the place there. And you find the spirals all over the world.
Yep, that's right.
And that's something that I followed a lot in the book Portals to the Stars. So yes, Verde Valley, a lot there in Chaco Canyon, love Chaco Canyon. But even like Petroglyph National Monument right there by
Boom.
Albuquerque. And it's like a perfect setup
Oh,
because you
dude, that
have,
place is amazing.
oh, it really is. But walking all over, Boca Negra onto the plateau and finding all the cool petroglyphs, several spirals. You got the star people and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But then along the cliff face, there's a little path, and it's like at the bottom it's star people. In the
Mm-hmm.
middle, you have the snake, and the snake was the ancient symbol for energy. And
That's
then
right.
boom, you've got the spiral, you've got the portal. So, oh, very simply laid out, star people using energy to enter the portal. Boom,
Right.
it's right there in plain sight.
Yep.
But yeah, we find the spiral all over the world. We find it in ancient Egypt. We find it, talking about Ireland earlier, Sardinia. We find it
Yep.
in South America. We find it everywhere, all over the world. and it was that designation for portals. In fact, I just did I just released it earlier this evening, a little reel on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that, where again, I was at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and they have a focus exhibit right now on uh, it was called Demons, Ghosts, and Goblins in Ancient Chinese Art. Okay, cool. Check it out. So going in there, and they got all kinds of neat sculptures and different pieces of art and all that. But they have this really long scroll, and it was called, what was it? Searching the Mountain or something like that. But the part that actually called out to me had nothing to do with searching the mountain part. It was when they were in, it's basically telling a story. It's a huge scroll along the whole wall. And they're actually in the water, and they're basically fighting a dragon. And this is the depiction, really, of the dragon sea, or the dragon's triangle out there by
Mm-hmm.
Japan and China and all that. And ancient Chinese folklore talked about that. This area of water had dragons under it, and that's why there are so many shipwrecks. You have Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, that twice went through these waters, and both times his fleets were destroyed as he was trying to invade Japan. It didn't happen. Fishing boats have gone missing throughout the years. Japan sent a scientific team out there in the 1950s to try to figure out what was going on, and that ship got destroyed. Bizarre stuff happens there, which is why we call it the Dragon's Triangle. Well, in the middle of this depiction of these guys fighting the dragon in the water and all that, there's a spiral.
Of
It's like,
course.
oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is. Yes. So they're even recognizing here, yes, we have that. And really what the spiral is, yeah, they're recognizing that vortex energy that it starts with the Earth's core. It's that energy, that
Mm-hmm.
magnetism that's coming up, and it has that swirling vortex energy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that swirl, that vortex, that's a three-dimensional object.
Right.
Well, when you take that swirl and put it into 2D, you just kind of take a slice out of it. Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
the spiral.
Right.
That's yeah.
Exactly. You're just looking at it top down in a
Hmm.
two-dimensional drawing. But then
Right.
on the other side of that spiral is another inverted spiral, right? So,
Right.
people think that they're like these V-shaped swirling tornadoes, but well, flip that on the other side, and that is going somewhere else with another reverse vortex that's
Mhm.
continuing on through the ground or up into the air because it's kind of like a mirror. What is the word I'm looking for? A torriddle shape essentially, and so that's kind of
Yeah.
like
Toroidal. Yeah.
what a
Mhm.
wormhole is essentially. So
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
are these man-made,
Well,
are,
that
are
and
they
then
wormholes
okay.
that have been there, but then we built these temples around them in these sacred spaces to harness that energy and to utilize something that was already there, but we just don't have the spiritual advancement to really understand what's happening.
Right. Well, and when you talk about a wormhole, I mean the end of the wormhole, we think of the big long tubes, tunnels in space, that sort of thing. But the end of that, the exit point, okay, is going to look like what? Well, okay, it's a circle because you're going into this tunnel. Well, a circle's a two-dimensional object.
Right.
What's a circle in three-dimensional space? Oh, that's a sphere. Oh, wait a second. What have we been seeing in the sky?
Mm,
We've been seeing the spheres. We've been seeing the balls of light. So, to me, when we're talking these drones or whatever they are, going back to that, um, and you're seeing them in conjunction with these big, huge balls of light, to
yeah.
me, those very well could be the portals. Or, okay, so a portal is basically in nature, these are randomly occurring phenomena in nature, and actually NASA's been studying these things up in space for years. But a Stargate would be the ability of an intelligent life form, whether it's human or otherwise, to basically harness that portal and be able to use it to their own means. So when
Mm,
we're talking, Stargates here on Earth, this would be humans or somebody else, has harnessed that. So
mm,
if we're talking Stargate chambers in ancient Egypt or elsewhere, you know, I I don't necessarily think it's the chamber itself that is the Stargate, but this is where we would maybe conjure up the Stargate, and basically that would appear as a giant ball of light that you could then walk into. And we hear stories about this stuff all the time, like out in the woods. Like our friend Ronnie that we were talking about before,
Oh yeah.
Bigfoot and all that. People report a lot of times in conjunction with witnessing a Sasquatch, they're also seeing these giant balls of light. So,
Oh yeah.
are those balls of light the mode of transportation? If Bigfoot is an interdimensional being, which a lot of people do speculate,
Yeah.
is that ball of light the means of the mode of transportation or the portal or Stargate that they were using to enter into our realm?
Yeah. I've been watching. Bub got me on the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot series,
Mm,
which
okay.
I think it's completed in season. I'm not even sure what channel it's on, but I know it's streaming on Max. You guys need to go check this show out. It's wild, but it does. Ron Moorhead's actually on it for one episode. He kind of comes in and gives the guys some advice that are. But basically the concept is this group of folks settled this area in Alaska in the 1920s, and they had a fishery, a cannery. They had started building a small town, and they just started having all these issues, people going missing, and you can
Poor
look that
child.
up. This isn't spoiler alerts
Yeah.
or anything, but Mike, you
No,
might.
not at all. We covered that on the Alaska Trials. Poor
Yeah,
Chatham.
and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I was going to ask you if you had maybe could shed some light of what you had heard about that village, and we could talk about, because it seems like there's some kind of portal there. There's
Yeah,
something
there's
beyond Bigfoot happening out there.
yeah, a lot of people call that particular one Hairy Man. There were people were getting, they were going missing, they were getting dismembered.
Yep.
For a while, people thought it was a bear, but the indigenous people were saying, no, this,
Yeah.
this is, I forget what their actual indigenous
It's
term
like
was for it.
Tanook or
But
something like that.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But the English speaking people called it Hairy Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, and it made sense. You have all this wonderful fishing up there in Alaska, and on this island, they decided to create a small town with a cannery and all that, so that instead of going all the way back up to like Anchorage or whatever, they could do it right there. And yeah, they started having all these bizarre incidents with people going missing, getting dismembered, all that sort of thing. It just scared the people off. And although production really kind of shut down in
Everybody left.
1920s, yeah, most people left. The last thing open was the post office. They actually kept the post office open there until like 1950 or whatever, but
Oh, wow, I
most
didn't
people
know
had
that.
already gone by then. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, wow. And basically the concept of the show is now their ancestors are going back, because where they're at, they're running out of resources. So like, hey, there was this place, but we know all the wild stories from our great grandparents and our grandparents about the dangers. So they send these guys out there to kind of like reclaim like a mission to, maybe resettle it, and then it goes on from there. But boy, it doesn't seem like this materialist animal that they're dealing with out there, because can beings travel and use trees and the energy of the forest, and basically be able to control and harness energy from living things like a tree?
Yeah.
And
Well, and just, the whole, even aside from, harnessing energy, using portal technology and all that, if you have some dangerous beast out there, this is its home, and it
yes,
just basic, I mean, just very, very basic stuff.
yeah,
It knows how to use trees and shrubbery in the landscape,
yeah,
to hide for protection, to stalk you, that sort of thing. I mean, that's enough. You don't
yeah,
even need harnessing energy and portals and all that stuff at that point. That's
right.
just, yeah, I mean, that's kind of even the same thing with like a bear or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's already enough. You start adding in the other stuff, and that just, makes it even more dangerous. But yeah, there's definitely something going on up there. I mean, that's the area of the Alaska Triangle, and
Yeah.
I cover a lot of that in my book, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. And yeah, I was just back up there this past summer, so it'll be, I think the episode is going to be airing in February. I know the show is starting, and I can't talk about it too much just yet.
Mm-hmm.
The show is going to be premiering January 28th. The name of the show is Hunting History with Stephen Ranella. and
Oh, cool.
he's going all over the place to do a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah. The
Um,
hunter, Steve
and
Rinella.
yeah,
So
yeah,
cool.
and one of those episodes is on the Alaska Triangle. So probably, like I said, I know the series premiere is right here at the end of January. I think it's the 28th. So one of those episodes, yeah, we're covering Alaska.
So cool. And Steve Rinella says he's never seen Bigfoot. He's
No,
never
no, he's
never
never
heard
seen it.
anything,
Yeah,
never seen
yeah.
anything. Like that's a dude that spends a lot of time in the
He's
woods.
out there a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that was an interesting time filming that because originally the production team was like, well, we don't want to get too much into like the supernatural aspects of the Alaska Triangle. We want to talk a bit about it. I don't want to go too much into what the story is that we're
yeah,
covering.
yeah.
But, we're up there with Steve. It's a beautiful view. And we were chatting for a while, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, I know you're into like, a lot of the supernatural stuff. And it's boom, all of a sudden we're into it all for a while. And it was like pouring rain on us the whole time too. So, it's a good time.
That's awesome.
So be on the
That's
lookout for
awesome.
that. Yeah.
So what's the connection to Stargates in Atlantis? I mean, Atlantis is a hot button topic right now. A lot of people have kind of gone against, the talking about Plato and his apparently Plato, people, real linguists say that Plato's a liar and he made all this stuff up, and it's his great grandfather Solon, and all of people are really basing so much. There you go.
There's Plato right there.
Yeah. People are
Oh,
basing
okay.
so much on Atlantis off of one account that maybe was made up. So I keep going back and forth about this.
Okay. So here's the thing. For one, Atlantis was not called Atlantis.
Yep.
Atlantis is a Greek word, just like Egypt was not called Egypt. Egypt is a Greek word.
The land of
Was
Chem.
Egypt? Yeah, it was. Yeah, Kemet, the Black Land, which was named for the rich black soil that during that Nile inundation season. So yeah, things have been renamed along the way. Like Luxor today. Well, it wasn't named Luxor. It was Thebes when the Greeks ran it. The ancient Egyptians called it Waset,
Hmm.
which basically means land of power. You know.
Yeah.
So okay, when it comes to this, yeah, we're getting the Atlantis story from Plato, as passed down to him over several generations from Solon. Solon's the one that brought the story back from Egypt. And actually, Solon wasn't really, he wanted to retell the story and he retold it in parts. But when he got back to Greece, he was so distraught at all the crazy politics that were going on that he got more focused on the politics. So we only have a partial story that came from Solon. And Plutarch actually mentions it in brief as well, that he talks about Plato getting the story from Solon, who got it from priests in Sais in Heliopolis. And he actually mentions Sanchi specifically at Sais. So the story is from the ancient Egyptians. And what's humorous about this is that Solon was in Egypt talking to these different priests, and he starts telling them about the Great Cataclysm. Now, this story that's in all cultures, right? The Great Cataclysm, the Great Flood, all that sort of thing. So Solon, believing he's very educated, he's trying to tell the priest about this.
Hmm.
And Sanchis just laughs at him. He's like, Solon, you Greeks are but children. There have been many cataclysms over the years. And in short, he basically tells them that, as this happens again and again and again, the ones that are left over after the destruction are like, the uneducated shepherds who have to
Right.
rebuild everything. So you're forgetting the story. But, we here in Egypt, we haven't gotten completely wiped out. We've been able to hang on to that history. Now, what's the problem with as what happens with many cultures is a lot of that information gets lost over time. So we always think of Egypt, the Library of Alexandria, which held all the knowledge. The thing is, the Library of Alexandria only existed for about 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
When the Greeks came into power, that all that knowledge of Egypt had been in like temples of, say, Heliopolis was really like the big center. That was the big capital, and that knowledge got transferred from Heliopolis to the Great Library, and of course, the Great Library got destroyed. So we ended up losing a lot of it. However, the Egyptians were smart enough to realize, we had the Persians come in here, and this would have been like 500 BC, right? Solon visited in 600 BC. So 100 years later, the Persians came in, kind of disrupted a lot in Egypt. They were able to survive that. But then the Greeks came in and started, adding their own culture to it. The Persians, not so much, but the Greeks, yeah, they started adding a lot of their own culture into everything. And did I just go black?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
Yep, I sure did.
We lost you on Zoom.
All right. Yeah.
Oh, it just flipped to looks like a webcam.
Yep. Okay, there we go. So something might be going funny with my computer here.
Oh,
in any case, so the Egyptians were smart enough to realize that we're starting to lose our culture. We need to be able to preserve this, and papyrus will last for a while, and they were already proficient at inscribing their temples and tombs and all this with the hieroglyphs. So they made a huge project out of the Temple of Horus at Edfu, where they put this story all over the place. We call it the pyramid or the I'm sorry, not the building texts of at Edfu. And building text is really a bad term for it, because you think of building, you're like, oh, these architectural designs for the temple and all that. No, it's actually the building of Egypt, like from its creation. And within this, you essentially find the Atlantis story. And they called it the homeland of the primeval ones, which was destroyed by water and fire, just like Atlantis was. And you had the survivors, rebuild after that. So yeah, the whole story is, well, I won't say the whole story, because you only have so much space on walls to be able to tell the story. So we have a good portion of the story there in the Edfu text, and it really does correspond very well with the story that Plato passed down. Now, did Plato embellish some things? Yeah, probably, because he got really, really super detailed, and it's hard to imagine that those details, really, really specific details, would have survived down from Solon like that. But he fully admits in there that our they're the Socratic dialogue. So this is all like a conversation that is happening between him and Socrates and others. And he admits in there, like, okay, our goddess Athena, well, that was their goddess Neith. And so he's already drawing these correlations that, what we call things here in Greece are not the same as what they're calling it there in Egypt.
Gotcha. Okay. I know in your book, you're looking at the Egyptian Stargates, and also the story of Atlantis is a part of this. What do you, without getting too much into, because I think everybody should go out and read this book, but what do you think? Because I've met some pretty interesting people over the years, and I had this really wild, I wouldn't call it a reading from a woman that, who knows what she was, but one thing she talked to me about was, she said, there's something, you're obsessed with Atlantis, you're obsessed with all these things, and she talked about this crystal technology, that there were these Atlantean crystals, and you had these, basically what they called were fire keepers. And they used this crystal technology, and they would push energy into these, and then there would be these flames or this energy that would be pushed out, and that's kind of how they powered their civilization. And so have you heard anything about that, or what was the technology they were using?
Yeah. As far as fire keepers, that's a little bit of a new one on me. As far as like using crystals, I mean, we find, okay, like ancient Egypt, we know they use crystals.
Yep.
just the fact that they're using granite for everything, and that's has so much quartz in it.
Right.
They were absolutely using that, and yeah, Egypt was a part of the Atlantean culture. Everybody thinks of the great ringed city of Atlantis, that's the capital, but they think
Right.
that was Atlantis. It was an island, but it was more than that. It spread across the globe, and that's another thing that's in the texts, that it was more than just that island, and very plainly states in there that that Egypt was part of the greater Atlantean culture. So we have to look at those surviving cultures to see what they were doing, what technologies did they have that very well could have been part of that technology that Atlantis had. So when we look at something like the pyramids, like the Great Pyramid of Giza, there are no hieroglyphs in it. The dynastic Egyptians put hieroglyphs all over everything, but when you look at like some of these bigger pyramids, like Great Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid, Step Pyramid, all of these, there's no hieroglyphs whatsoever. There are smaller pyramids, and they didn't have any burials either. No bodies found there, but then you look at the smaller pyramids that are kind of off to the side, and they're all filled with hieroglyphs, and yeah, there may have been a sarcophagus and a body in there, and so you can kind of like really plainly see that, okay, the dynastic Egyptians saw these great huge monuments, like the Great Pyramid, and they're like, yeah, I want to be buried in something like that.
Yeah.
But they couldn't build something on that huge grand scale. They made it a little bit smaller. And then, yes, as dynastic Egyptians did, they put hieroglyphs all over it. So, we do find pieces of that Atlantean culture all over. So I won't say that the Egyptians didn't build the pyramids, and I'm definitely not going to say aliens built the pyramids. Okay, that's
Right.
But I believe it was the Egyptians living there at the time when they were a part of the Atlantean culture that did build those, and so the survivors, of course, forgetting how to build those things, because when you have a great cataclysm like that, you just go into survival mode and you're just trying to live. We need to get some food, we need to build a little shelter over ourselves and just kind of survive until we can get our civilization going again. And those people that had that knowledge of how these things were built, they died off, or maybe they didn't survive the cataclysm, or whatever, these sorts of things. So yeah, then they just tried to mimic it after that, and there are a few things that kind of trickled down. That's what we look for, is those kind of remnants of technology that we kind of link back to Atlantis.
Yeah, I mean, you see it here in Ohio, where you have burial mounds that are next to these earthworks that appear to be much older, and then these later cultures come along and they say, hey, we're going to bury our chief here, or whoever that was maybe the Fort Ancient people and the Hopewells. Maybe they didn't build the more advanced Newark earthworks or Serpent Mound, or maybe there were older cultures where, just like us, did we build Serpent Mound? Did we build Newark? No, but we have a gift shop there. Did we build, you know what I mean? The parking lot's here, there, but we didn't build Serpent Mound. We're just here stewarding it many thousands of years later.
Yeah, exactly. Or even up here, like Lakeview Cemetery, John D. Rockefeller's grave marker is a giant obelisk.
Oh my God, dude! You know about that? Well, yeah. You're from Cleveland. Sorry, my buddy's from Parma.
My family's buried there. My family's right there.
Wow.
So the big, like that whole little city of mausoleums and everything.
Yes.
My family's buried right up on the hill there. Yeah.
Dude, you're blowing my mind right now. The only other person that I know, I'm not going to mention his name, but a good friend of mine that I've done video production and met on a shoot actually years and years ago, became friends, but he had an experience at John D. Rockefeller's site. And I'm not going to go into his story, but it really was this life-changing experience where he came in contact with some type of energy. And I don't know what got him interested in because I think he just kind of heard that it's this giant obelisk. So he just really wanted to go check it out. But ended up having this really strange experience at John D. Rockefeller's gravesite. And he sent me pictures that he had taken. He's a photographer. So It's a really wild cemetery. I mean, it's great because
Oh,
there's a lot of big money. People
there's
don't realize Cleveland used to
mhm.
be the spot. I mean, that's
It
why the
was
mafia
the
was
5th
there.
largest it was the 5th largest city in the country at one point. Yeah, there
Yeah.
was a lot of money coming in and out of here for
Yep.
a while. The 60s really kinda killed it,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Um, but yeah, but kind of the point was, yeah, Rockefeller's, grave marker is a giant obelisk.
Yeah.
Now, he wasn't Egyptian, you know? Um, so he is one of those where, yeah, we're mimicking something that we've seen because,
Yep.
there's some homage or whatever that we're paying to it, or we're looking at it as, yeah, those people had power and that was a symbol of their status and their power. So I want to use that as my marker for my tomb or whatever. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, Rockefeller's obelisk is nowhere near any the size of any of those
Hmm.
back there in Egypt. It's cool, it's impressive, but
Right.
yeah, it pales in comparison to that. But yeah, it's just one of those where he's mimicking it, and we see that throughout Egypt, and we see a lot of repurposing as well.
Hmm.
And that plays into a lot of the issues with trying to date things
Hmm.
in Egypt. So we know like Ramses II went around to everything and put his name on it, whether he built it or not. He's like, yeah,
Exactly.
it's in my kingdom. I'm going to put my name on it. And
Yep.
yeah, this one particular it's a small pyramid. It's a tomb. It's in the Saqqara complex, the pyramid of Unas. And again, it's one of those pyramids where they're kind of mimicking the older ones. You look at the older ones, the bigger ones, they're huge. They're really, still intact. You look at this little one, the whole top of it is falling apart. It's like you're looking at that was a pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah, at one point. But they didn't have the arc the the architects to build that correctly. But in any
Sure.
case, you go inside into the room where the sarcophagus is, and if you shine your flashlight in the wall just the right way, I mean, beautiful artwork along the walls, and you shine the light the right way, and you can see that, oh, this was carved over another design, and you can see that it's I guess they figured out that it was the King Khufu. They found somewhere his name, but you can see, there's this guy with like a spear or something hidden behind it. You can't see it if it's all lit up uh, with the with the eye like that. You kind of have to just turn off the lights, hit it with a flashlight, and you can see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they repurpose stuff all the time. So it makes it really hard to date stuff.
The Sphinx. There's no way the Sphinx's head is the original head. There's just
No,
no
well, no,
way. It had to have been. It clearly is a body of a lion, and it was aligned with Leo over 12,000, the
yeah,
constellation Leo over 12,000 years ago. And then Robert Schoch does his geology work and
yeah,
basically says, hey, there's water erosion on the Sphinx enclosure. And the last time that happened was right before the Younger Dryas. So
yep,
this thing has to be older than 12,800 years before basically the middle Younger Dryas period. So
mhm,
it had to have been built before all these rains came in and the Nile was basically being inundated.
right,
Massive
yeah,
climate
exactly.
change. Was there a flood? Who knows? That area. But I just think the Sphinx is old, man. The
Oh,
pyramids
it's and that's
are
one of the things that got
much
me
older.
interested. Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things that got me interested in all of this was, I mean, yeah, I grew up watching Indiana Jones, so that already got me interested. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, 1993 when that Mysteries of the Sphinx special came out
Yep.
with Shock and West and Charlton Heston was the host.
Yep.
I was just absolutely fascinated. I mean, a young guy, like what
Yeah.
was I,
It's a life changer.
19 years old or whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm just like blown away. This is awesome. And then like the following year, the movie Stargate came out. But yeah, it just kind of blew my mind with that. Where here's a geologist. This is his profession, and he's saying, look, this, and other geologists agree with him. You just look at the weathering pattern. This
Hmm.
is the channeling is water. Sure, there's a little wind erosion in there too, but the wind is not making those channels. That's obviously water erosion.
Hmm.
And so, and that's a trained geologist. And now you have these archaeologists that are trying to say, well, there weren't other, you know, monumental structures in the world that were built at that time, and then 20 something years later, just go back tappy. The
Yeah.
other thing they were throwing out there, show us a potsherd. Well,
Oh my God.
you're not going to find a potsherd
No.
around there at that, because the Sphinx enclosure is solid limestone.
Yep.
Okay, and we know that this site had been renovated many times. I mean, that's the dream stealing
They're
is,
doing it now. They're
they're
renovating
doing
the
it now.
Sphinx
Yes,
right now. I
they're
don't like
renovating
it.
the
I
Sphinx.
don't like it. I think it looks terrible.
Yeah,
It
well,
looks rudimentary because
they
we don't have the technology to even begin to. I mean, they carved the Sphinx from. It's a negative carving, which means that they
right.
basically carved the stone around it. So they didn't carve it. It's like
They used
literally dug
yeah,
down into the ground.
and they used the blocks from that to build the Valley Temple in front of it,
Right.
which fine. And what's interesting about that is, you have the limestone blocks from the Sphinx enclosure that are in the middle, and you have these granite blocks that are placed around it. Well, there are places where you can look, because part of it's fallen away, where the limestone blocks are weathered away, which means that the temple, the Valley Temple itself, originally was just the limestone,
Yep.
and the granite was a later addition to help restore it. So, but yeah, we know, all of this has been restored several times. The Dream Stele there talks about a restoration work of it. Well, when you fully restore your monument, you usually have like a big party, pageantry, and all this, which means you're usually cleaning out that whole area. You just get your guys along there, sweep it up and everything, which means any potsherd that may have been there beforehand
Mm-hmm.
is going to be gone. That's going to be swept away. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to find potsherds from that, those previous eras, because they would have cleaned that up and removed it. And it's not getting, I mean, other areas of the world you can find potsherds because they get buried in the dirt and sand and all that. Well, this is solid limestone.
Right.
Nothing's just going to, get buried over time in there. Well, except for when it fills up with sand, which then they would dig it back out and
Yep.
clean everything out and remove everything. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
the
that's
only thing
that
that's buried
sketch
in the
from.
limestone itself are, fossils from millions of years ago. So,
Right. And that's the
Yeesh.
sketch that you see from the early 1800s is when British explorers went down to Egypt, and that's what they sketched. You just saw the Sphinx was from the head up. That it was completely
even early
buried.
photography, you see that.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's really cool
Yeah,
images.
and they did a lot. It was like cement or whatever to try to fix the headdress and all that, and they didn't do a very good job of that.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
what is
it's fascinating.
so I really believe that, what we had here in Ohio, you can call it Turtle Island, some people refer it to, but was that some kind of outpost of Atlantis? There's a lot of people that think it was, that our area of North America could have been an outpost. There's a lot of things that connect into other areas. And somehow, you're right, it's this mother civilization. Atlantis, people think of the city, but it was a giant worldwide culture that, just like anywhere else, you're going to have little variations of dialect and language, and people had their own style. You go down to Peru and Mexico and the Yucatan, and but the geometry lines up is very similar in pyramids. It seems like there's advanced machining down there in Peru and in certain parts of Mexico that are just, I mean, there had to be some kind of mother culture where everybody's getting this information from. And you think maybe that is Atlantis is it's such a loaded word. When you hear that,
Well, that's the
people
issue.
roll their eyes.
You say Atlantis, and it immediately turns people off.
Yeah.
And Graham is having issues
Yeah.
these days by saying, lost civilization. So you say that now these days, and
Yep.
people, it turns people. But here's the thing, is that I think it still does intrigue a lot of people. I think there's something inherent in our DNA that knows that there was more in our ancient past
Yep.
that got lost to time. That's why we keep going back to the question. And yeah, Atlantis might be a hot button term, but I think we inherently know that there was something deeper in our ancient past that's been lost to time, and that's why we keep going back. That's why we keep, that's why stuff like Indiana Jones and things like that
Yeah,
fascinates us so much. Or when there's a new
right.
archaeological find, oh, what did they find? What's
Why were the Nazis so obsessed with ancient cultures? Why were they in
oh yeah, well, why
why
were they
were
in
they in
Antarctica?
Tibet? Why were they in Antarctica? Why were they
Yeah,
all over trying to find, all trying to find the
yeah,
Ark of
and
the
I think
Covenant? And
Antarctica, yeah, and I think Antarctica may have been an ancient outpost of Atlantis. You mentioned
hmm
here in America, yeah. I mean, their culture spread far and wide, and they were a very proficient maritime race of people. So why couldn't they have sailed down to Antarctica? And we have those ancient maps that show Antarctica there with
ice
animals
free,
and vegetation.
ice free. Yep.
Yeah,
Perry
Perry Reese
Reese.
map
Yep.
and a couple of
Fascinating.
others. Yeah. So
Which was a
and here's
copy
the thing.
from an older map. Sorry to cut you off, but the
Well,
Perry
yeah.
Reese
No,
map,
no, no.
they
Many
were
older
just
maps. Yeah.
copying older and older and older and older maps, and people would just, they maybe
Yeah.
escaped um, the destruction of the Alexandria Library, and you had a group of monks and dudes that were in these early secret societies. That it's your job to make sure these get passed down, and luckily
Right.
we have fragments of some of that stuff still.
Yeah, yeah. Perry Reese, he took it was something like 20 different maps or whatever from ancient times and basically put them all together, tried to
hmm
see what lined up and all that. And yeah, and we find that happening. Now, we don't have those original maps that he drew those from. We have his, just like Theodoros Pelikanos, well, I have it right back here. The Ouroboros, his
hmm
famous illustration of it. That's actually from an older alchemical tract from Synesius. We don't have the original from Synesius, and Synesius would have drawn his right. Well, he was there in Alexandria around 300 AD.
hmm
So, and this was 1100 years later. So, we kind of that's what happened. You would kind of re-illustrate these things so they wouldn't get lost to time. So this is actually, yeah, a piece of information that would have been out of that Library of Alexandria. It probably likely Perry Reese's material was as well. But yeah, when it comes to Antarctica, and I even threw this in there in Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. I was kind of like, okay, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here. We've been talking about Alaska. I'm going to throw Antarctica into this real quick. And yeah, if we talked about earlier that the I actually, was it this show or was it the one that was on last night where we are talking about how Hitler the Third Reich was looking for power pieces.
hmm
He wanted, he thought that if he had any of these uh, old artifacts, that it would give the Third Reich more power, more prestige. He was actually trying to build a huge, world museum, and he believed that if he had all these power pieces, the Third Reich would be the power. So, okay, what the heck's he doing down in Antarctica?
Right.
The story was, well, we're trying to establish whaling for the oil back when we were barbaric and used whales for their blubber and oil. Well, the best place for that, um, you know, would have been a little bit further up north in was that St. George's Island? Not Antarctica itself, but he went all the way down to Antarctica. Now, if he had access to those maps, like Perry Reese, which he probably did,
hmm
then he would have seen Antarctica with fresh vegetation and all that stuff. So, was he down there looking for some of that older technology? Like if the Atlanteans had been there, if they had established a colony there, then would their technology be buried under the ice somewhere?
Yeah.
And if this is, the same technology that like the ancient pyramids are based off of and how they built those,
hmm
that would probably be very advantageous to somebody looking for power. I've always thought, people think sound, magnetics, whatever is it might be some sort of like anti-gravity technology that was used to build those things. And if that's there in Antarctica, because there was a, ancient colony of Atlantis there, that would be money for anybody.
And I think that's why there's so much hush hush, and the government doesn't want to admit that they're seeing these advanced crafts above New Jersey and Scotland, like your friends, and
Yeah.
that aren't just these drones, these SUV-sized drones, but they would have to admit that this technology exists. That's a big problem, Mike, because now you're talking about the whole civilization of this world would have to change. And if you didn't have to pay for oil and gas and turn the electricity on, and we had some sort of source or technology that was this Atlantean or Egyptian, how they were able to be so advanced, well, then do we start building pyramids again? Do we become a civilization that becomes so advanced where we don't need jobs? AI is going to do everything for us, and replicators and robots. And this is something we love to talk about because it really does feel like they have to hold on to this information, because as soon as they let it go, it's going to change the whole world.
Right, exactly. And, people that are in positions of power don't want to lose their power.
Right.
So, yeah, they're going to do whatever they can to give us the illusion that that they're doing something for us, and that, we are advancing. Keep throwing a bunch of consumer products
New
at
iPhone
us.
16 Pro. Guess
Yeah.
what? I got it.
Exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
that much different than my old iPhone. The camera's
Probably
a little
not.
bit better, but it's
Yeah. Yeah, how much bigger and greater can it be? But they keep throwing all that stuff at us. They keep throwing consumables at us, so that buy the latest and greatest thing.
yeah.
And all the while, it's like, yeah, we could have free energy and all of these other things, but they don't give it to us. So that keeps us under their thumb.
And is that what powers these Stargates? Is it this hidden energy system, this different? And I think there's more than one type of, you can call it the gravitic technology of propulsion, but I think there's so many things that can create energy. We have electricity. That's it. There's got to be other more advanced ways of rocket propulsion and electricity. That's what we got, baby. And we're stuck. We can't advance.
Yeah, and we know that Tesla was onto it over 100 years ago, and he got shut down.
Yep.
So it's a shame.
Yep,
Yeah.
JP Morgan wasn't having it. Where did all those trunks go? You ever seen that where they're tracking down Tesla's trunks and they go to the museum where he grew up? And the curator of the museum was like being so dodgy, and they're asking him, he didn't expect them to be drilling, holy cow, these people actually know what they're talking about. And he got real freaked out. He would not talk to them. And, there's the whole conspiracy that Trump's uncle, who was a physicist, was a part of the group that went in there and they removed those trunks.
Yeah,
he was a part. Yeah, it's a fun one. But the guy from the Coral Castles and people like Tesla.
Edward Lee Scanlon.
Yeah. And is there something to that where, they get...
Well, and again, the little bit that we know from Lee Scanlon is it had something to do with magnetics, or at least that's a little bit of documentation that's kind of leaked out. He had these papers on magnetics, but he said that he had learned the secrets of the ancients.
That's right.
And how they built the pyramids. And so he was able to build his coral castle with whatever that technology was. You had, Tesla trying to, create free energy, use the energy of the earth, which we know the ancients did. He was, talking about wireless energy and communication. And even he built the world's first drone. He was talking about artificial intelligence in the 1890s.
So wild, man.
Yeah.
And he talked about how it was being transmitted to him. Like he would get into these hypnotic states almost, where he was doing all these thought experiments, and like all of these designs and things would kind of come to him.
He and that it's what I call eternal knowledge. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious. Other people call it the Akashic records. Einstein would do the same thing. He would have his thought experiments, and basically you're just putting yourself into a meditative state, and you're leaving yourself open to all this information that's out there. And going back to my other book, my first book in the series, Travels Through Time, when I talk about this, all the information of the universe is there, because time doesn't exist. Everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen is all here concurrently, which means all that information is here too. It's just a matter of being able to tap into it. And so, Tesla was able to do that. And he, you go back into his history as a young man in Serbia, he was having out of body experiences. He was astral projecting,
Hmm.
all that back then. So yeah, this was something that he was very well in tune to. He had an understanding of how the ancients built things, how they used energy, the way that the pyramids used energy and all that. He was very well aware of all that.
He was so far ahead of his time. He was just a little too early, man.
And that was kind of the problem. Yeah, because
Yeah.
when like with the Wardenclyffe Tower, um, okay, so Marconi used his technology. Tesla was eventually awarded the recognition for inventing the radio after he had died. It was something he fought for most of his life. That no, he was like, no, Marconi did not invent the radio. He used my technology to invent his device, but that was me. And it was finally granted to him. But I know when I was in school, they were still teaching it was Marconi.
Hmm.
So you got Tesla building this huge tower talking about worldwide communications. Well, you have Marconi that is basically demonstrating, hey, I can send communications from, shore to ship. And the investors at that time were like, oh, wow, that's something we haven't had before. And Marconi is able to deliver on that. But you have Tesla over here like, that's nothing. That's chump change. We're talking the whole world. And the investors at that time couldn't see that vision because he was too far ahead of his time. And they were just like, no, you can't be talking about the world. I can see shore to ship. Yeah. And, that small, that huge. No, that's just too big. And so they laughed him out of the room when, yeah, Tesla was, he was just too far ahead.
Man.
He needed to figure out a way to kind of piecemeal it and kind of spoon feed it to him. And he didn't have that. And he was a terrible businessman too. Like the whole
Yep.
thing with he would do things like negotiate down his contract. Like I can't remember if it was Morgan or Astor, but one of those two where they're offering him a 50-50 deal. And Tesla's like, well, you're the money behind this. You're the investor. You should have 51. And of course screwed him in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that
Because you
was
go to court
actually
and the court's like,
Westinghouse.
well, you only have 49. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was Westinghouse when they were developing
was it Westinghouse?
Niagara Falls, the first power plant that lit up New York. I think it was
Yeah.
dude, well, that
He
wasn't his.
negotiated a worse contract for himself. It's like, oh my God. Yes, terrible businessman,
Just
unfortunately.
not a good marketer, not a good
Yeah.
businessman, and that guy just doesn't have that built into him. He is one of the purest inventor, genius minds of all time. And even today, what if he was born now, or let's say 20, 30 years ago, and he's coming into all of this technology now? Do you think they would let him release this stuff now? No, he would be discredited as a kook. He would never be invited on any major media platforms. A bunch of podcasters and people like us would have him on our show.
Oh, we'd have him. Yeah. Of
Yeah,
course.
but he would be discredited. He would be thrown under the bus in some way.
Yeah.
Even now today,
Even now today. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah.
not much has
Because
changed.
again, it comes down to control. Yeah, I mean, Morgan, it's like the idea once Tesla started talking about, no, it's going to be free energy. What are you talking about charging people? Pfft, nope, out. Yeah. We got to be able to make our
Oh
money on
man,
this. It's terrible.
absolutely. Well, Mike, this has been awesome as usual. Always enjoyed talking to you, brother.
Yeah.
Let us know where we can find the book, where we can connect with you, the YouTube channel, everything you got going on. You did mention that you're going to be on another program with Dan Aykroyd, which, man,
Yeah.
I'm really bummed that Bub missed this one because we've been trying to get Dan and our friend Bill Homan, who's the steward of the Mitchell Hedges Crystal Skull. We've had Bill on a couple times. Great guy. But I guess Dan got kind of scared away from one of the previous stewards of the Crystal Skull. And so when he started Crystal Skull Vodka,
Yeah.
right, it's Bub's life mission to connect Bill Homan with Dan Aykroyd right now. he is totally
Well, I hope it
obsessed.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll fully admit, I have not met Dan Aykroyd because they film him separately
Yeah.
than the rest of us. They
Of
do
course.
us one at a time and all
I
that.
can't wait to see that.
Yeah, no, it's and the new season's been out since what was it? Late November, I think.
Okay.
In any case. So yeah, been on a couple of episodes already, another one's coming up. this Friday, tomorrow. Well, this is going out later, but so yeah, new episodes are coming out Friday night at 9 p.m. So definitely tune into that.
Where's it streaming?
And yeah, oh,
Or
it's History Channel.
on History Channel. Got it.
It's on History Channel. Yeah, History Channel, 9 p.m. Eastern. And so for me, you can find my work, MikeRicksecker.com. I also have my online learning portal, connectinguniverseportal.com. The YouTube channel is Mike Ricksecker, so youtube.com/@mricksecker, and then you can find me all over social media. So I have a lot of events coming up. So you can find me like Conscious Life Expo. I'm doing a special, and that's in Los Angeles in February. But I'm doing a special New Jersey event. It's an exclusive Portal to the Stars event, and it's Rahway, New Jersey, Merchants and Drovers Tavern Museum, and this is like a 4-part event. So yeah, we're going to be covering, since we're right there in New Jersey, we're going to be covering the drones and the orbs and all that as a part of this. So definitely check that out. It's April 5th.
There you go, guys. Fantastic. I'll be checking that out. It's a live in-person event?
It's an in-person event in New Jersey. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. There you go, guys. Mike, don't go anywhere. We're gonna do an outro here, and I'll come by and we'll have a little chat, and I'll send you away properly, brother.
All right, sounds great.
Thank you so much, Mike Ricksecker. Everybody, man, that was incredible. Definitely got to go get the book, guys. Definitely urge you. Mike's a great writer. The YouTube page, everything he's got going on, we always appreciate his time. So much love to Mike, and much love to all of you out there, and Stoner and Master Control, helping us make everything look and sound the best ever. And we got a lot more stuff coming your way. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe. You got to hit that notification bell. Keep sharing and also commenting. If you guys like this video, tell us what you think. Go over and hang out at Mike's YouTube channel. Drop him a comment. Tell him what's up. And we're going to put this baby to bed. Much love. Take care, guys. There it is.